Hey everybody, it's Alvin. I'm going to be walking you guys through how to create another demo app, like Sid did last week if you were there for that or had a chance to watch it later. He walked us through how to code out or implement the Pythagorean theorem in code.org, and we're going to do something similar, but in a whole different realm of subjects. So if you haven't had a chance to check that out, I would recommend that you do. It's a pretty cool application and has a lot of skills that might be transferable to projects that you're taking a look at. But I'm going to be walking us through a language arts or English type of app, and I'll kind of explain the the main gist of it real quick. So once you get onto the main screen, you'll see it says something along the lines of Navajo language app. And this is actually a design that a few of you guys brought up when we were first planning out apps. So I'm glad that I was able to kind of bring that to fruition. So one of the first options that you see on the main screen is the pronunciations. Um, so that's one option that we have here. And it will take us over to this pronunciation screen. So here, what's really cool is that you'll come to this page and there's 4 words right now. And it's really cool is that if you hover above one of these words, so you don't even have to click on it. If you just hover above one of the words, it will go ahead and someone or a clip of the recording will go ahead and pronounce that word, that Navajo word that we're trying to pronounce. And the next aspect of it, like we'll see, is the quiz. Um, and that's just testing the retention of the subject that you're covering. So we're going to do something a little bit different. I know we haven't necessarily worked with checkboxes, but we're going to do something along the line of checkboxes here, and there will be an option to submit the question and get it for grading. Um, so, and obviously we've worked with this or something similar to this is whether the answer that they provide is correct, you'll go on to a correct screen, and if the answer that they provide is incorrect, you'll have another screen and then an option to go back to the other screen. So let's take a look at this from beginning to end and kind of just walk through what a user would experience in this situation. Okay, so we land on this main screen, we're going to call it says Navajo language app. It'll have a picture on it, and there's 2 options, pronunciations and quiz. Let's walk through the first route. Let's say the user clicks on the pronunciations page or the pronunciations button. And, and what that's going to do is it's going to go ahead and take us over to this pronunciation screen. Um, so so we'll have word pronunciations written at the top just to let the user know what's going on this page. And right underneath, they'll have directions. I just put that in asterisks. We're going to have obviously more in-depth directions on that page. But like I said, there's going to be 4 words on that screen. And when you hover above each word, it'll go ahead and pronounce that word. So someone speaking in Navajo will go ahead and pronounce those Navajo words, just so the user knows how to pronounce those words in real life. And I see a lot of practical applications for this. So you could use that to cover material that you've went over in class and um, have your students keep working on that material over time, especially when you're not with them. Um, and then once they're done with this page, there's there's a home button at the bottom, if you'll see right here. And what the home button should do, it's go ahead and bring us back to this main screen back here. So once we're back at this main screen, we already pressed the pronunciations button. So we're going to go ahead and click the quiz button. So we'll go ahead and do that. And if we click the quiz button, it's going to take us back down to this quiz screen. And this is mostly just, and this is a very practical application too, is that if you're creating like a quiz on an app or some sort of information retention tester, like a quiz or a test or something along that line, just to test if your students are retaining the information that they're learning in class or on other aspects of this app, we have some sort of quiz feature. And normally there's options to do buttons, and that's really cool. But what if, let's say you had one of those questions that we really don't like using, but questions like that have multiple right answers or expecting 2 answers or 3 answers. And that's really cool because code.org has an option to use checkboxes, and that's what we're going to use in this situation. So let's say, I think in the implementation, we're going to say that word 1 and word 4 are the correct answers. So you need both of those to be correct. So assuming that our user, that our student, picks word 1 and word 4, and they go ahead and click submit, this submit button, assuming they pick the right answer, is going to take us over to this correct screen. And on the correct screen, you'll have it say good job right across the top, indicating to a student that they've answered the question correctly. It'll have some sort of picture and a home button. And obviously, like we mentioned before, this is just going to go back to the main screen at the top. But let's say the student didn't answer these questions correctly. Let's say they missed. Let's say they picked 1 and 2, but they also need to click 4, which is the right answer. 2 is the wrong answer. So let's say they did that. They did word 1 and word 2, and they click submit. Obviously, this is going to take them to the incorrect screen, which will say try again all over the top, and it'll have a picture, and since they missed it, it's gonna actually have a back button. And what this back button is gonna do is gonna bring them way back here to the question again, and they'll have another opportunity to answer that question. Let's say they got it right this time, and they got it right, and they clicked word 1 and word 4, press submit. Like we said, it's gonna follow this line right here, and it's gonna go down to the correct screen and all the way back to the home screen at the top. And that's pretty much a workthrough of this application and just the design or a high level design of it. So let's go ahead and try to design this on code.org and just after that code it out. All right. All right, so now that we're done with designing, let's go ahead and head over to code.org. So I'll go ahead and share my screen on here. Hopefully you guys can see that. And yeah, so we're on the code.org main page, and we're gonna go ahead and click on create, and we are gonna go into the app lab. All right, cool. So first thing we'll do once we get into the app lab is go ahead and title our project just so it saves and we know where it is and what it's called. So I'm gonna go ahead and call this the Navajo language. Perfect, and go ahead and click on save. So we have it there, and code.org will go ahead and just save it periodically so you don't have to worry about resaving it. All right, let's go ahead and head over to the design tab since we're gonna do that first. And the first thing that we have is screen 1. And if we remember from our design, we're gonna go ahead and call this the main screen. And this is just common practice in coding. You don't really have to follow it. But you usually, if you're naming something, you're gonna start with all lower cases, and then every new word that is introduced into the name is gonna have a capital letter. So you're gonna start off with lowercase main, and since we're introducing a new word screen, we're gonna go ahead and capitalize the S in screen, and so on. So if we wanted to add another word, you would do something like that. But we're gonna keep it at main screen, and let's go ahead and set a background color. Let's pick something inviting, like maybe green. Yeah, that looks about right. Okay, so on this page, we're gonna have that big welcome at the top. So that's what we're gonna start with. So normally we create that using a label. So I'll go ahead and drag one out. And one of the biggest things I'll recommend is that you go ahead and label everything that you are working with today, just so when we do work with these labels and buttons and checkboxes and all of that, later on in the code, they'll actually make sense, and you don't have something like label 17 and then you don't know what label 17 is actually referring to. So we're going to make it something basic. So why don't we go ahead and call this the welcome label? All right, so we have a welcome label, and we're going to set the text to Navajo language app as we had first talked about. And we'll go ahead and recenter that once we're done. But I was thinking, since this is the title, let's go ahead and make the font size a little bit bigger. How about 30? Oh, sorry, 30. All right, so we have that. I'm gonna go ahead and center the text just because it's the title. We wanna make it look good. And let's see, why don't we also go with a color on the text, or the font color. Let's go with maybe purple. That sounds about right, with green. Okay, let's go ahead and go with that. Sorry if it's not aesthetically pleasing. I do not know much about that. So we're just going for functionality here. Obviously, you can um, readjust and make it pretty if you need to. All right, cool. Let's have that title there. And we'd also promised an image right in the middle. It's a welcoming thing to have on the front of our app. So we'll go ahead and do that. So I'm going to throw this down here, and let's just call this the welcome image. So just to be consistent with what we called the label. And we're just going to go ahead and choose the image. Luckily for us, I think I already had something picked out for us. So let me go ahead and pick the welcome image. Awesome. So this is what I had picked out. We'll go ahead and pick that. And as you can see, it's there. And let's go ahead and change, it's a little bit small right now. So let's go ahead and change the size of it. Let's go with maybe 300 by 300. Yeah, that looks big enough. Okay, so I'm gonna throw that down here right in the center. That looks about right. And the next thing that we need to do is we need to have two buttons, one for pronunciations and one for quiz. So let's go ahead and look at the option that says button and throw one down here. Okay, and so we are gonna call this the let me see if I can spell this right, pronunciations button. And like I said, make sure we're labeling everything. It's going to make life so much easier once we start coding. So, and the text that we want on here is pronunciation. So PRONUN. There we go. All right. Cool. It looks like we might need to make this a little bit wider for the text to show up. So let's go ahead and try 150. Yeah, that looks about right. And why don't we go ahead and make this purple as well? Awesome. Let me throw that down about center. And just do your best job to guess where the center is. If you can't completely figure it out, I'm sure I'm off by a little too. So we'll throw pronunciations down there. And so we have that button. Cool. Let's go ahead and throw down another button. Actually, one cool thing, just to be consistent with anything, you can go ahead and copy the button that you're already working on. So I'm going to go ahead and click Control Copy and then Control V, or Control C and Control V. So that way, if you're looking for consistency among your designs, you can go ahead and keep that there. So you'll have the same button, but we're going to go ahead and rename this. So notice how it says button 2. We're going to go ahead and name it the quiz button. All right, and we're going to go ahead and change the text so that it is quiz. Awesome. So that's everything that we actually needed on the main page. Yeah, that's actually everything that we needed. So let's head over into the second page, which was the pronunciation screen. So let's go ahead and do that. Pronunciations screen. All right. And we can go ahead and change the background color for that as well. Why don't we go ahead and try blue? I don't think we've tried blue just yet. All right, that looks about good. So that's the pronunciations page. And remember, the first thing that we had on the pronunciations page is a title across the top, and we're going to do the same thing. So I think I'm going to go ahead, and since we've already started labels with pronunciations, just for short form, I'm going to just use the letter P for pronunciations, and I'm going to use the letter P for pronunciations and Q for quiz. So let's call this P title, and the text is going to be word pronunciations. That's what we decided when we were designing, so that's what we'll stick with. Pronunciations, perfect. And just like the font size on the other side was 30, we're going to go ahead and make this font size 30. And it looks like we're going to have to stretch it out a little bit. So if your words ever start running out on the side, just you can go ahead and drag the side over until they fit. So I'm going to try that again. Let's see. These are a little hard to work with. Maybe we'll just have to drag it out a little bit. Oh, there we go. And perfect. And one thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and change the text alignment. We're going to change it to center, just so it looks like a title. All right, and we're going to change the text color just so something that looks good on blue. Let's go with white maybe if we can. Yeah, we can just probably select the white at the top right there. Yep, that looks good. So word pronunciations, and the next thing that we wanted on there was a label describing what to do on that page. So we're going to throw down a label. Yeah, we can drag it up later. So we're going to call this P directions. Remember, we're using the letter P for the pronunciations page. So the text is going to say something along the lines of, let's say, hover above the word that you would like to hear pronounced, and listen to the pronunciation. All right, and that should be good enough for now. The text size, we can maybe bring it down a bit. Yeah, 12 sounds about good, and just stretch it out so it's looks nice. And let's center it if we can. Perfect. And just to be consistent, let's go ahead and change the text color for this to white as well, just so that you can read it well. Okay, and let's go ahead and center this right there. Okay, so you have a title, you have directions, and the next thing that we need to do is the 4 buttons for the 4 words that we're going to be doing. So I'm going to go ahead and throw down this first button. That looks about right, and looks like we'll have enough space to change it up. So I'm going to call this P word 1 button. So P word 1 button, and it's going to have on it the word itself. So yeah, let me go ahead and copy and paste that word. And if you're ever having trouble getting Navajo letters or accents or anything along that line into, you're not able to type it into code.org, you can always copy and paste it into code.org. So if you're having trouble with that, just try copying and pasting it from online or some other resource, and it should work just fine. Okay, so that looks good for right there. Let's go ahead and change the background color just so it looks somewhat aesthetic. Let's go with the red. Let's go with green again. Yeah, that lighter shade might be good. Okay, so we'll put that there. Okay, cool, and we can leave that there. And obviously, if you want, you can go ahead and change the fonts around on any of these pages, really. But just for consistency, we're going to go ahead and just copy that button, and we'll make another one. We'll throw it right underneath the first one that we just made, and we're going to add a new word to it. So let me go ahead and add that. And make sure, I almost forgot there, we're going to call this P word 2 button. Perfect. All right, so we have 2 words. We're going to go ahead, copy and paste, and make a 3rd word. There we go. Yeah, 3rd word right here. All right, let me go ahead and grab the 3rd word for us. All right, and we're going to call this P word 3 button. All right, and there's nothing really that we have to change just because we copied and pasted it. So it looks like it's very consistent throughout. Okay, and let's go ahead and make one last one for the 4th word. All right, we'll throw that down there. The 4th one's going to be more of a saying because I ran out of things that I could Google. So I apologize for that. My knowledge of Navajo is very limited, but yeah, let me go ahead and rename that to P word 4 button. And looks like the word or it got cut off near the end. So let's go ahead and increase to maybe 120. Yeah, that looks about right. So we have to make that one just a little bit bigger so it fits, and just recenter it because it got a little bit uncentered. So that looks good. And the last thing we need on this page is we're gonna have a button for, remember the home button, just so it takes us back to that main screen. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw down the home button right here. And I'm just gonna call this the P home button. And the name of it just gonna be home. And let's go ahead and change this to red. Red seems like a good color for this. Okay, cool. That's actually all that we have going on in terms of design on this page. So we're going to move on to the next page, which if you guys remember was the quiz page. So we'll go ahead and create a new screen and we are going to call this one the quiz screen. All right. And a new background color. Let's go with pink seems like a good color for this. So let's go with pink. See if I can get a good shade. That looks about good. Yeah, okay, we'll leave that there. First thing we're gonna do, we're gonna throw out a label just so we know what's going on this page. And we're gonna call this, remember just when we did the pronunciations page, we started with the letter P. Now we're gonna start with the letter Q for quiz. So we're gonna call this Q title. And the text for it is just gonna be word quiz. Perfect. And let's go ahead and change the font size to 30 and the text color or the font color. Let's change that to, let's see if yellow looks good on this. And it'll be fine. Word quiz. Okay, we're gonna go with yellow and we're just gonna throw that somewhere near the middle. That looks about good. And the direction. So that's the next thing we're gonna do. So let me throw down another text box and let's see. Yeah, let me see, just to get the same shade of, yellow, I'm gonna go ahead and just copy and paste this same one that we just used. I'm gonna throw that one underneath, but we're gonna make sure we call this Q description. Q direction, sorry, Q directions, and then we're gonna say the question that we're gonna be using with the checkboxes later on is just please select all of the Navajo greetings in the below list. And that's all the directions that we really need. And we'll make sure to bring down that font size. So let's say 12. That seems like a good amount. Yeah. And let's go ahead and center it before we forget. Yeah, that looks right about the center. We can put that there. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is have those 4 words or those 4 options. So I'm going to start with the labels. I think that's a good place to start. And I'm just going to do a label for each word. So we're going to call this Q word 1 label. And I don't know if you've noticed yet, but usually after the name or the label, like, so in this case, the name is Q word 1, I usually try to put at the end of it what it is that we're modifying. So this happens to be a label, but in the terms of buttons, we have something like P home button. So make sure you, this is just good practice to include also the object that you're modifying. So whether it's a label or a button, make sure you also include that in the ID that we're modifying. So right here, the ID, make sure you include label. It's not required, but it really helps later on when you're coding. But yeah, let's move on. Let's change the text to the first word that we're going to be using for this. And this is going to be one of the correct answers, but it doesn't really matter just yet. So we're going to use that. And let's see, that font size seems about right. Let's go ahead and change the color. What haven't we done yet? I don't think we've done orange yet. So let's go with orange. Oh, that is not showing up too well. yeah, let's try a different color. Let's try dark blue. Okay, that looks about right. Um, yeah, let's throw that down. Let's throw that down here. And just for consistency, like we were doing with the other ones, and we're gonna go ahead and just copy and paste it. And just so we have the same, oh, looks like I did something. Um, oh, I must have copied and pasted a screen. Let's just go back to our quiz screen that we were working on. Let's go ahead and copy and paste a label, not a screen. All right, so let's put that right here. And we're gonna add the next word that we're planning on using for this. Um, all right. Um, all right, cool. So we're gonna call this keyword to label. Awesome. And it has the same color like we wanted, so that's already fine. We're gonna copy and paste it 2 more times, but right now we'll just do one. Try to make it about even, and we're gonna add the next word that we're gonna include. So these last two that I'm doing right here are gonna be the wrong answers. So just make note of that. So this is gonna be Q word 3 label. Perfect. So we're going to throw that down there, maybe drag it down a little bit just so the spacing's just about even. Yeah, that looks about good. And we're going to do the fourth option. So copy, paste, and we're going to do the fourth option somewhere down here. Yeah, there we go. We might need to change that just to make it all even in a second. But and the fourth option is going to be another one of those correct options. So remember, we're using checkboxes on this because we want one of those quizzes where there's more than one correct answer to the question. That to get the question completely correct, you need to select 2 of the right options instead of just one correct answer. So we're going to name this P word for label. All right. Just to make sure that I got the spacing right, it looks like there's a big gap here. And yeah, we're gonna call that about even. Just try your best with it. I know it's kind of hard to count the numbers and everything. So yeah, we'll leave that there. Let's say that's even. All right, the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna throw down some checkboxes to indicate their choice on these questions. So I'll throw that down. Let's make the width and the height, let's say 20 by 20. I like that. Yeah, 20 by 20 seems about right. So let's make that 20 by 20 and let's call this Q checkbox 1. All right. And we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna copy and paste this. We're gonna copy and paste this checkbox, just try to make it about even. And we're gonna call this Q checkbox 2. No need to modify color or anything like that. We can just leave this one just as, and make a copy of the next one. And we're going to call this Q checkbox 3. All right, and then one more time for that fourth option. And we'll drag it down. All right, and we're going to call this Q checkbox 4. Perfect. All right, there's just 2 more things that we need to do on this screen, and then we can move over to that other screen or that last screen that we have going on. So just like the other, maybe we can actually just copy it just so it's consistent. So let's go back to that pronunciation screen, and we're gonna see if we can just copy this home button. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy it from here and just try to paste it down here. Let me click down here. There we go, awesome. So somewhere along that line, yeah, that looks about right. So I'm going to put the home button down here, and that I copied and pasted just so it's consistent across all of the pages. But we need that home button to go back to the main screen. I'm going to throw down one more button, and that's going to be the submit button. So I'll put that right about here. Let's see. There we go. I think that's about even. And we're gonna call this the queue submit, and instead of button, it's gonna say submit. And let's see, the background color, let's go ahead and make this green because green seems like a good submit color. Make it a little bit darker green. Yeah, that looks about right. And one thing that we make sure we need to do is the home button. Since we copied it, it's gonna automatically put an ID on it, but we're gonna go ahead and call this the Q home button. All right, cool. So we have that. That's all we need to do on this screen. Let's go ahead and create our last two screens. If we remember correctly, it's going to be a correct screen and an incorrect screen. So let's go ahead and make the correct screen first. So assuming the student correctly answers the question that we just created, it's going to take them to this screen. Let's maybe pick a green color just for correct. So let's pick a light green color. That looks about right. And let's throw a label on there that says good job. So this is all stuff that we learned um, in unit 3 and unit 2, and I guess, yeah, unit 1, 2, and 3. So this is all beginner stuff. Um, so just the design of the page. So let's go ahead, throw good job, and let's call it, so this is the correct screen. So I'm going to use the letter C. We're going to say C welcome label. All right, and just like we did with the other ones, we're going to go ahead and make it size 30. Looks like it's a little too big for us, so let's stretch it out. There we go. All right, let's throw that on there. And remember, what we wanted to have on this page was a picture. So let's go ahead, throw a picture down here, and let's call it C. Yeah, let's say C welcome image. We're not going to be doing much with that, so the ID doesn't really matter. Let's upload the good job image. Upload. All right, perfect. Let's keep that there. We'll choose it. And just like the other ones, we had 300 by 300. So let's go ahead and make that the same and try to make it a little bit centered. And just like the other one, we're going to go ahead and copy the home button because we want the student to be able to return once we're at the correct screen. We want the student to be able to return to the main page or the home screen once they're finished with what they're working on, or once they get the quiz correct or the question correct. All right, so there's a home button. Let's make sure we rename it to C home button. There's not much else that we have to change on this page. So we have one more page, the incorrect page. So we're going to call that incorrect screen. And let's change the background to red, but a lighter red. Yeah, that looks about good. Let's add a label. And let's say try again. I think that's what we said we were going to use. So, oh, whoops, that's the ID. So let's call this, since this is the incorrect page, let's call this the I welcome label. And we're going to type the text as try again. Perfect. So we're going to put that there. And we're going to change it like the previous times. We're going to change the font size to 30. I think it might be interesting to change the text color to maybe like a dark red. So let me try that out. Yeah, that looks good. So try again, right in the middle, and we're gonna have an image that we're gonna call the I welcome image. Even though it's not really a welcome image, we're just gonna say that. We're not gonna be using it later on in the code, so it doesn't really matter the ID that we give it, but I'll go ahead and find the try again image, upload that, and choose that to be the one that we're working with. And remember, we're gonna change it to 300 by 300 for the size. All right, so let's go ahead and make that a little bit centered. And if you guys remember from the previous one, we should have it copied. Yep, the home button. So we're gonna keep that where it was. And remember, we're going to rename it to the I home button. Perfect. All right. So that's actually it for the design. Let's go ahead and switch over to the code aspect of things. So let's switch over to the code tab. And let's maybe let's start with our main screen again. So let's do a quick run through of our app, just so we know what we're working on. So this is the main screen, and then it's going to take us to the pronunciation screen where we have these four buttons, which we hover over, we'll get a pronunciation. We can click home to go back to the main screen, where we can go to the quiz screen, and we have four words, four checkboxes for those options, a home button just to go back, and a submit button. And if we get the answer correct, we'll go to the correct screen. If we get it incorrect, we'll go to the incorrect screen. All right, that looks good. So let's head back to the main screen. And the first thing that I always like to do is go ahead and work with all of the buttons in the application. So and what I mean by that is what happens when we click on these buttons? Where do we want the screen to go? What screen do we want it to show up with? So that's what I mean by that. And we're going to do that for all of the buttons that we know we're going to be working with. So the first one that I see is the pronunciations button. So if you guys remember from, I believe it's unit 3, is if you want a button to work or to be clickable and take you somewhere, you have to use the on event block. So we're going to go ahead and drag that in. And this is where it's very important that we name all of our buttons and all of our labels correctly, because it's so much easier to find it in this list and you know what each one is referring to. So we're going to be looking for the pronunciations button because that's what we named it. And there it is, the pronunciations button. And we're going to do click. So when we click on the pronunciations button, what do we want it to do? We want it to go to the pronunciation screen. So how we do that is inside of this on event block, we're going to put the set screen. We're going to put that there, and we're going to choose out of all of these, we're going to choose the pronunciation screen. Pretty simple. We've done this a couple of times before, so this should be pretty familiar, but I just want to reiterate what this is doing. So what this is pretty much doing is on the event that you click on the pronunciations button. So this is how it's read. So in the event that you click on the pronunciations button, it's going to set the screen to the pronunciation screen and just replace those words with the ones that we're going to follow with right now. So, and it should be the same exact thing. So the next button that I see is the quiz button. So we'll throw that down there. On event, the quiz button is clicked. So we're going to find the quiz button is clicked. We're going to set the screen to the quiz screen. That makes sense. So we'll throw that down there. Those are all the buttons I see on this page. Let's head over to the pronunciation screen. All right, let's start with some of these buttons. All right, the word pronunciations page, let's start with this button. And I believe, let's see, on event, we called this one the P word 1 button. And we're gonna do the same thing. Let's just grab all of them at the same time. So we have a couple there. So it's gonna be P word 1 button, P word 2 button, P word 3 button, and P word 4 button. I'm just laying these out just so we know what's coming. So, and they're all gonna be worked on a clicks, or sorry, we're gonna fix that in just a sec. Right now, normally the button defaults to click, but what we wanted to try out was if we can just hover above the letters or hover above the button and it'll pronounce it for us. So we're gonna actually change it to mouse over. That's the one for hover, mouse over. So yeah, let me walk you through, just like we did with the on event click, what it looks, how we read this in code or in more of an English format. So in the event that you mouse over or you hover over the P word 1 button, you're going to do everything that's in this function block. So we're going to add stuff to it. So what we want it to do in that function block is we're going to go ahead and play a sound. We're going to play the sound of the pronunciation. So let's go ahead and grab the play sound option and let's go ahead and select the MP3 or the file that we're going to be using. So I'm going to go ahead and click upload file, and I'm going to choose the one that's relevant for us, and just choose it. Perfect. And you can do this. This value right here, if you'll see on the play sound, it's for a loop. So if you want the sound to keep looping, which we don't want in our situation, if you want the sound to keep looping, you'll put true. If you don't want it to keep looping, we'll put it as false. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to put false. All right. So we're going to do the same exact thing. So we'll grab a couple play sounds and throw it in all of the P word button on events. So play sound, and we're going to change the sound to the respective word. So I'm going to go ahead and click make new sounds, upload file, and just upload the correct MP3 or sound file for each word that we're going to be working with. Let's see if I remember. Yeah, I think it's this one. We're going to choose that in the last one. Upload file. There we go. We're going to upload that, choose it. And okay, so everything should now be, all of the on events for the mouse over or the hover should be working now. It's play sound, and when you hover above this word, it's going to play this sound. When you hover above this word, it's going to play that sound, and so on. So each word will have its respective sound. Oh, let's make sure we change all of them to mouse over. I think I forgot to do that. So let's go ahead and make sure we do that. Change all of the buttons to mouse over. Just so mouse over is just a different way to say hover above or hover over using your mouse. So we did that for all of the P word buttons, or the 4 buttons right in the center. The last thing we need to do, I see another button on the screen, which is the P home button. So let's go ahead on event, the P home button. Let's go ahead and find the P home button. There it is. All right, and we're going to use click for this one because we want to click that button. We don't want to hover above it. So in the event that the P home button is clicked, think to yourself, where would we want this to go? And if you got it correct, it's going to be the main screen. So the home button always takes us to the main screen. So in the event that you click the home button on this page, you want to set the screen to the main screen. So we want to take the student or the user to the main screen. All right, so that's it for this page. Let's head over to the quiz screen. Let me see if there's any buttons here. So we have 2 buttons at the bottom. We're going to deal primarily with the home button right now. We're going to come back to the submit button because that's a little bit more complicated. So let's do the home button. We just did it with this one right here, and it's going to be exactly the same thing, but different label. So we're going to do, instead of P home button, it's going to be the Q home button. So let's go ahead and find that Q home button. Perfect. And on click, it's going to set the screen to the main screen. All right, cool. So we'll leave that there. And yeah, that's it for this page. We're going to come back and do the submit button. But actually, we can go ahead and put it down right now, but we won't add anything to it just so we know where it is. So this is going to be the Q submit button. All right. We're just not going to put anything there. We're going to come back and we're going to do something really cool there with some Unit 4 information that we learned. So we're going to leave that there. We'll come back and fix that. The next screen that we're going to take a look at is the correct screen. So once we're at the correct screen, we're going to go ahead. There's only one button to deal with, and it's the home button. So let's go ahead and do it like the way that we've done it so far with the home buttons. We're just going to go ahead and find, I believe it's called the C. Where's the C home button? And we're going to click on it, and we're going to set the screen to the main screen. All right, and we're going to do the same exact thing with once we go to there's no more buttons on this page, so we're good there. We're going to go to the incorrect screen, and we're going to do the same exact thing with the incorrect button. So in the event that you click on the I home button, you're going to set the screen back to the oh, I guess I missed something there. Yeah, let's head back to the design. I forgot that part. So this button, actually, remember, if you get the question wrong, we don't want the student or the user to go back to the home screen. We want to give them another opportunity to try out the question. So instead of this being a home button, this is actually going to be an I. Let's try that. I back button. Sorry, that is my fault. So instead of actually making it a home button where it returns to the main screen, we're going to make it a back button where it returns to that quiz screen. Okay. We don't have to change anything else. It's just we can maybe even change the color just so we know it's a little bit different than the home screen or the home button. So yeah, maybe we can change the text color to black so it stands out a little bit more. That is a weird color of yellow. Let's make that a little bit brighter. Okay, that should be good. Sorry, that's on me. So we called it the I back button, and it's going to take us back to the quiz screen. So we're going to go ahead and code that out too. So it's the I back button now. Let's go ahead and see if we can find it. The I back button, and in the event that you click on it, we're going to take it back to the quiz screen. So this is in the event that the user gets the question wrong, we're going to give them another opportunity to answer the question. So in the event that you click this back button, it's going to take you back to that quiz screen, exactly like we want. Awesome. We'll leave that there. That is actually all of the buttons that we need to be working with on this one. So all of the buttons should be working. So maybe we can go ahead and give it a shot. So let's head back to the main screen and run it. So in the event that we click the pronunciations button, it's going to take us to the pronunciations page. All of these blocks should now, once we hover above it, play a sound, and it does. You obviously can't hear it. It's playing into my ear pretty loudly. So I'm going to skip over that part. But the home button should take us here. Click on the quiz button. It should take us to the quiz page. Obviously, we haven't done anything with the submit button yet, so it's not going to be functional, but you can still click on all the checkboxes. Yep, and you can unclick. Ooh, there we go. Awesome. You can unclick. Yeah, that's about it. One thing that I do want to do is I want to space these out a little bit more. You can notice that if I try to click around here, it clicks on ones that I don't want and kind of clicks. That's because some of these buttons or checkboxes are overlaid on top of each other. So we can maybe space those out, but regardless, we can go to the home button again and it's a little bit functional. So let's go ahead and reset it. And just before we move on, I'll go ahead and space those out a little bit better for us. So that's going to be on the quiz screen, and maybe we'll bring it down all the way down here because we have the space, so let's use it. All right, that looks about right. Maybe we can drag this one down over here. Yeah, and this one we can drag down a little bit. And okay, that should be a lot easier to click around with. They might not be spaced correctly, but we'll just look past that for now. Okay. Okay, that's close enough, I guess. Okay, now we're going to slowly move on into some Unit 4 stuff. So we'll head back to this is the button this is the screen that we need to stay on. So the quiz screen, because we haven't coded this submit button yet, and that's what we're going to be doing. So if you've done, if you've worked with Unit 4, you've probably learned about functions or methods. So we're going to be writing a function or a method to those words are interchangeable. We're going to be writing a method or a function to grade this quiz for us or grade this question for us. What I mean by that is it's going to check if the correct checkboxes are checked and bring them to the appropriate page, the correct screen or the incorrect screen. So how we bring in functions in code.org is this little functions tab, and that's what we're going to do. So let's go ahead and create the function. And we'll do that by just dragging this functions. We'll drag it all the way to the bottom for now. And let's go ahead and name it quiz grading. And the same rules apply for naming methods or functions. Let's call them functions for now, since that's the terminology using code.org. And the naming just rules just apply. or the norms is that you start with the lowercase letter and capitalize every on the first letter of every new word. So we're going to use quiz grading. Um, and we'll go ahead and fill in this function later. But before we do that, let's go ahead and make sure we add something to the Q submit button. So when we do click the submit button over here, we actually call this function. Um, yeah, so calling a function just means in some other location other than the function itself, we want to run the code. So in the Q, so what that means is in the event that the Q submit button is clicked, we want to run the code that is in the quiz grading function at the bottom of the screen, even though it's not the same block. So how we're going to do that is we're going to drag this my function and we're just going to rename it to that quiz grading. Perfect. So in the event, so let me just read that in more of an English-ish way. So in the event that you click the Q submit button, it's going to call this quiz grading function, meaning it's going to copy all of the code that's in the quiz grading function and run it. So as of right now, we have nothing in the quiz grading function, and we're going to change that in just a second. Okay. If my understanding of Navajo is correct, the right answers to this question are 1 and 4. So this first word and this second word, or sorry, this last word, so the first and the fourth checkbox. So we want to write code that says if, and basically it says if the first checkbox is checked and the fourth checkbox is checked, set the screen to the correct screen. And we want to make sure that the other ones are not checked as well. So if you guys remember from Unit 4, there's these things called if statements. So let's go ahead and add an if statement to check if the right ones are checked. Yeah, let's go ahead, add that in there. Okay, so let's go ahead and so the first condition that we want to make sure is there is that the first checkbox is, let's see, how do we want to do this? We can, yeah, we can do it this way. Okay, so we have 4 conditions that we want to check. Well, we have 4 conditions that we want to check, but before we even get into that, let's do the easy parts first. So let's say in this square or in this little white bubble that we have right here, what we want to happen is if this condition is met, we want to go to the correct screen. If that condition isn't met, which is the else part of the if statement, is we want to go to the incorrect screen. So that part we actually know how to do pretty easily. We're just going to click set screen and we're going to set it to the correct screen. So if some condition is met, it's going to go to the correct screen. And if some other condition is met, as in if that condition isn't met, it's going to go to the incorrect screen. So pretty simple there. Now let's actually define the condition that we want it to go on. So there's 4 conditions pretty much. So let's go over what those 4 conditions are. The first condition is the first checkbox is checked. The second condition is that the second checkbox is not checked. And the third condition is that the third checkbox is not checked. And the last condition, the fourth condition, is that the fourth checkbox is checked. So yeah, I know that's a lot, but let's make sure we get all 4 of those conditions. Because even if we had the first, second, and the last one checked, even though that's going to be incorrect, it might go to the correct screen. So we want to make sure that all 4 of those conditions are met. So to combine 4 different conditions, we're going to have a long line of code, but we're going to try it out. So we're going to use the Boolean or the and operator. That just means when we have 2 conditions. So we're going to get a little bit more crazy. We need 4 conditions. So we're going to have an and operator inside of an and operator. So what that means is that this condition and this condition must be true, and this condition and this condition need to be true for it to go to this correct screen. So that's how we do 4 conditions. But assume we only had, let's say, 2 conditions that needed to be true. You could do this condition and this condition needs to be true. Let's say either or condition needed to be true. Like you had either checkbox 1 or checkbox 2 needed to be true. You could have this one in there. So if checkbox 1 is true or checkbox 2 is true, go to the correct screen. But we're going to be dealing with we have 4 conditions that need to be true. So we're going to come back to what we had before. So like I said, this means if this condition is true and this condition is true and this condition is true and this condition is true. So that means 4 conditions need to be true. Okay, let's do the first couple ones. So to get checkboxes on here, to check if they're checked, there's a method already called their get checked. So get checked is going to return true or false. It returns what we call a Boolean value. You might have learned that in lesson 4. It's a weird word. Boolean just means a true or false value. So get checked will return true if this box is checked. So let's go ahead and I believe we named it. Let's go ahead and double check what we named it. I believe we named it Q checkbox 1. So let's go ahead and name it Q checkbox 1. We want to make sure we have the correct naming on these ones. So Q checkbox 1. So this is going to return true if the first checkbox is checked. And let's go ahead and do let's do the same thing for the other correct answer, which is Q checkbox 4. That's the other correct answer. So if checkbox 1 and checkbox 4 are checked, it meets the first 2 conditions. So we're going to do the other conditions. What's cool about this is that we need to use the exclamation point, which is the not, which means the opposite of. So we want to make sure that these aren't checked, because remember, get checked returns true if the checkbox is checked, and it returns false if the checkbox isn't checked. So we need to use the exclamation point or the not, which does the opposite, to check if it's not checked. I know it's a little bit confusing, so let me see if I can explain that a little bit better in just a second. So let me throw down these get checks. So it's going to become a really long line of code. Oh, did I throw that somewhere wrong? I think I did. Maybe not. It looks about right. There we go. Oh yeah, I did throw that in the wrong place. Okay. Yeah, okay, that looks good. So, okay, let's change this to checkbox 2 or Q checkbox 2 and Q checkbox 3. Q checkbox 3 and Q checkbox 4. Or sorry, Q checkbox, yeah, that's on me, sorry. It's going to be, remember, the incorrect answers are 2 and 3. So Q checkbox 2 and Q checkbox 3. So these are the incorrect answers. I'll keep covering the wrong one. Okay, there we go. All right, so let me walk through that condition a little bit more. So remember, get checked returns true if the checkbox is checked, and it returns false if the checkbox is not checked. Okay, and we want true for all of these conditions because we want it to be true and true and true and true. So this should be true. Get checked will return true if checkbox 1 is checked, and we want that and we need that. Get checked will return true if checkbox 4 is true, and we'll get that because that's a correct answer. Okay. The reason that we use the not operator, the exclamation point, is because we want the opposite. So we want this in entirety to be true, but get checked, we want it to return false. We want it to return false because we don't want that checkbox to be checked. So when get checked returns false, the exclamation point reverses it so it returns true. So we'll have a true condition, which is what we want to make the condition true. And the same thing for checkbox 3. If you're having a hard time understanding that, definitely review the Boolean expressions from Unit 4, and that should make it a little bit more clear. It is a little bit more of a complicated example of that one, but that's actually, I believe, everything that we needed to do for this app. So let's go ahead and test it out. Let's see if it's working. So let's go ahead and run it. Um, all right, cool. So this is the landing page, the pronunciations like we've seen before. If you hover above, it'll go ahead and um, play the audio for each word. Seems like it's working. And we go home. We're going to do the quiz page. We haven't tested this out yet. Make sure that the home button's working, obviously, but we'll come back to the quiz. And let's pick the wrong answers first. So let's pick these two. Try again. Let's pick maybe these two. Still the wrong answer. Should take us to this page. Let's pick these two. Still the wrong answer. All right, let's try the right answer now. So these two should be the right answer. And maybe let's try one of the right answers, not both of them. Still the wrong answer. Okay, let's try the actual right answer. So these two are the right answer. So if we did this correctly, this should take us to the correct screen. So moment of truth, there we go. Awesome. So it took us to the correct screen. We'll go ahead and click home, reset, and that is the application. Yeah, so basically we just created the design. It's always helpful to draw out the design before you do it, just so it's a little bit easier when you're actually designing it. We went through and designed each of these screens, and then we coded it out. So the main chunk of that was setting the screen in the event of a click or a mouse over or hover. And then the last part, in the event that you click the submit button here, we wanted it to call a function that grades our question or grades our quiz. And we did that using this if statement and these Boolean conditions. But yeah, if you're having trouble with any of that, feel free to check out Unit 3 and Unit 4. I'll also provide some directions on how to create this app in more of a document format, just so it's a little bit easier for you guys. And hopefully that will help too. But yeah, that's going to be it for this. So have fun coding and good luck.